Well, when President George W. Bush left office, his approval rating was not very high. How have things changed all these years later now?
Political strategist Ron Nehring joins us tonight to talk about the president's legacy. And, you know, they say it took many years before Truman was appreciated for all he did. The shelf life of and analyzing it all can be decades, really, can't it?
It sure can. You know, I look at this through my own experiences, which were closely tied with President Bush's. I was the county Republican leader for 6 years. My first full meeting as county Republican chairman was September 10th, 2001, and so, you know, that following morning all of our lives changed. You know, you've seen President Obama adopt many of President Bush's policies because they were necessary. They might not have been popular, but they were necessary. And obviously, the president's, you know, President Bush's, term was defined by the post 9/11 era. He made a lot of tough decisions. They weren't easy, and it's really easy to carp about them. But I think history, every month that goes by, shows that there was a lot of wisdom in the actions that President Bush took.
President Bush is gaining momentum in the opinion polls. To follow up on what you just said, why are people changing their minds now after all these years?
Well, I think it's a number of different factors. One is that his low approval rating at the time he left office, I think, was not helped by the financial collapse that occurred on Wall Street just in the closing months of his administration. Some of the pain and shock of that has passed to a degree. Also, the fact that, you know, President Obama has not had soaringly high approval ratings either. And so, you know, when President Obama came in, he ran against President Bush, even though President Bush was not on the ballot. That campaign has passed into history as well. You know, I think that history has a more dispassionate view of the president's term as opposed to, you know, those of us who, you know, experienced some of the things, the difficulties which happened to take place at the same time he was in office.
It's interesting that same poll shows that still most Americans disagree with the fact of going into war and calling, you know, the weapons of mass destruction as the reason for that, when that turned out not to be the case. Yet history, I guess, will reveal in decades that the CIA records, FBI records, the intelligence that will finally be revealed may soften that blow and may give you more insight into why he made those decisions.
Well, I think President Bush had to take all these factors into account, not all of which are public at the time, and he has to use his best judgment. That's why we don't elect a party platform on the ballot. We elect a person on the ballot. That person has to exercise judgment and responsibility. I think the president made what he believed was the right decision at the time, and I think that you have to take a look separately at the decision to go into Iraq is one decision. How that the post invasion occupation and transfer of power and such, clearly there were huge mistakes that were made in the process of that. But you know, the United States is not an expert at going in and occupying other countries. We don't have a lot of history of that. We're not like some other countries which have done, you know, that plenty of times.
I got to ask you before we run out of time. Barbara Bush spoke to reporters today, and one in particular, she was asked about the possibility of Jeb Bush running for president. She said, quote, "There are other people out there that are very qualified. We've had enough Bushes," obviously referring to Jeb Bush again. Will that soundbite come back to haunt Jeb Bush if he decides to run for office?
I don't think so, because I can't imagine too many people using a mother's comments about her son in a way that's, you know, negative at all. That's just setting herself up for a pretty sharp pushback. I think that, look, I know Jeb Bush, met with him several times. He's a very impressive Republican leader, but we have a lot of impressive Republican leaders in our party. And I think when 2016 comes around, we're going to have plenty of choices from people with all types of different backgrounds and experiences, and we'll see who the nominee is. I have no way to predict who that is.
I like what he said in response to his mother's comment, and he said one word: priceless. That was it.
Well, what else can you say, right? What else can you say?
Family Matters. Ron Nehring, good to see you as always. Thank you for your comments
You bet.
tonight.
See you.